Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Miss Texas Show. It is your co-host, Melissa Santana. Super excited as always to bring you another edition of our show, another great conversation, and another great guest. And today's guest is not only an author, is a consultant, is also a trainer, public speaker, has created a nonprofit, and done so many other wonderful, wonderful things. Her name is actually Dr. Kat, and she's also written numerous great publications that has helped us, and is also a board member of There Is Hope for Me Incorporated. So in essence, Dr. Kat is wonderfully knowledgeable, has a lot of great information to share, and definitely helps our community in more ways than one. So we look forward to speaking with her today.
The Ms. Texas Show is a voice of hope for victims, survivors, advocates, and community leaders against gender-based violence to share their stories and resources. We began showcasing life in Texas. Today we are impacting lives not only in Texas, but also around the world. Under our segment Military Time, we run this segment in partnership with the National Veterans Chamber of Commerce. We invite military and veterans who have overcome traumatic events to share their experiences during and after their military service. Under our beauty segment, we invite fellow pageant winners and contestants, artists, musicians, actors, models, and dancers, and last but not least, our survivor leaders from family violence, sex trafficking, sexual assault, stalking, and other traumatic events, who are ambassadors for these causes to share their lives and the impact they have made. To become a guest on our show, email us at msusaTexas@gmail.com. If you would like to support victims and survivors of gender-based violence, make a tax-deductible donation to Hope Picks Global at www.hopeyxglobal.org.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition, once again, of the Miss Texas Show. As always, not only are we excited to bring you another edition of the show, but we're also excited that you will continue to support us and are viewing another great show with us. And so I want to officially welcome you all, not only to the show, but welcome our wonderful, wonderful guest that we have today, Dr. Kat Rosenblatt. And Dr. Kat has absolutely a lot of great notable accomplishments, so I'm super excited to share. But among them is being an author, consultant, trainer, and public speaker, as well as board member of There Is Hope for Me Incorporated as of 2011. Dr. Kat also created a nonprofit known as From Survivors to Survivors of Human Trafficking, providing peer mentoring and restoration, which operates in Florida. She has over 10 years of experience empowering survivors of sex and labor trafficking, as well as domestic violence. She has created survivor empowerment workshops, led groups for adults and minor survivors of sex and labor trafficking, but it is also an international trainer and speaker. She has developed a human trafficking wheel and assessment tool, identifying trafficking within schools, has created a survivor leadership life coaching program, and has written 2 books on human trafficking. One is entitled her memoirs, one is her memoirs entitled Stolen, the True Story of a Sex Trafficking Survivor, but then also Trafficking in America, the Most Undetected Human Rights Violation of Our Time. Dr. Kat has been featured in the Vatican News in 2021, as well as several other articles and news stories worldwide. Apparently, I lose the ability to speak later in the day. She has also conducted research in collaboration with the Thorn Foundation, has a personal testimony of overcoming human trafficking and abuse from the time she was just 13 to age 17. Throughout her early life, she experienced several trafficking experiences, but also after escaping her initial trafficking and drug addiction, she found herself pregnant and ended in a 20-year abusive marriage where Kat says that leaving was harder than staying. With so many triumphs over unbeatable obstacles, Dr. Kat is now a much sought after speaker and trainer in the areas of human trafficking and domestic violence, as well as an inspirational leader to women everywhere. I can't agree more. And so I am super excited to have you with us to be able to share more about yourself and all those wonderful things. And so if you could let viewers know, Dr. Kat, more about yourself, who are you, more about your incredible journey, and just, what brought you here today.
Well, thank you, Melissa. And it's such an honor to be on the Miss Texas show and to be here with you today. And as you said, I did start a nonprofit. However, it's called There Is Hope for Me, because I wanted there to be hope when survivors said that. But it is a survivor peer-to-peer mentoring and support program. And as a result, we have helped many, many survivors come out of the life of sex trafficking primarily, but also labor trafficking and domestic minor sex trafficking. So we work a lot with minors because I was a minor when I was trafficked and there was nobody to help me. There was no thorn, there was no show bringing awareness, there was no textbook, nobody even talked about it because it wasn't a definition, a defined legal term. So kidnapping, yes. Child abuse, yes. But putting them together to say this is human trafficking, no. And therefore, I started working with law enforcement and legislators back in 2010 to help bring about several laws, creating a safe harbor in Florida for survivors, and then also providing the importance of peer-to-peer survivor support and mentoring. And here we are today. I'm excited about my book Stolen being nominated by the wonderful Miss Eileen Dong for the Hope Picks International Book Award. And it is truly a great pleasure and an honor. And this will be my first book award if I am so blessed to receive it. But regardless, I'm just happy to be here and I'm very happy to be alive.
Amen to that. Oh, definitely. Yes. And so speaking of that, I think you and I appreciate that you clarified the name of the organization as well, but also and just all the incredible things that it's led you to now. But if you don't mind, I want to take it back to when you, as you mentioned. So I do think that that's an incredible danger, is that a lot of the unfortunate survivors, but at one point in time victims of human trafficking, are many of them are minors, and so they're not usually recruited at a later age. They're usually brought into that life at a very early age, unfortunately. So I'm curious, like, for you, if you don't mind going into that, we don't have to like go too deep,
Sure.
but just what, unfortunately, because it's something that is very dangerous, but I feel like isn't talked about enough. It's also it's very common, but we don't always have enough conversations about human trafficking and about how these things can happen. Unfortunately, what happened with you? Like, how were you, how did it happen for you? How were you able to eventually get out of it? But just curious about how it started for you.
Well, you're right. In the United States, the average age of entry into sex trafficking is 13. So it's between 12 and 14. And that's how old I was, 13 years old, when I got recruited at a pool in Miami Beach. And to give honor, though, to my survivor sisters who are also adult survivors that were recruited as adults, it does happen there as well through force, fraud, or coercion. However, if you're a minor and you're engaged in any form of commercial sex, you are automatically considered a victim or potential victim of human trafficking. And so at 13, like I said, there was no definition, there was no awareness campaign. And I was coming from an abusive home. And this older girl, her name was Mary, she was my first recruiter into the life of sex trafficking. She was thin and pretty and all the things I thought I wanted to be, this blonde hair, blue eyed girl. And, having low self esteem, struggling with my weight, struggling with my family life, and feeling a sense of belonging and lacking a sense of belonging and love, I clung on to her. When she befriended me at the pool and she echoed everything that I was feeling, she replayed it back to me. And so traffickers will do that to gain the trust of a survivor. Now, I have gone on to get my PhD, as I mentioned, and start a nonprofit. There is hope for me. So I've learned in doing my dissertation, Trafficking in America, which is my first book, that the actual average grooming period is a month to gain the trust and to lure a child into trafficking. I don't want to promote that. I don't want to see that continue, but I want to bring awareness to it. These people come across as false friends and false boyfriends, and you usually won't even recognize them coming because many times they are people that look just like us, their kids or their young women or their young men or their boyfriends or girlfriends or good looking young people that are actually there as part of a trafficking ring to recruit you, to recruit someone into the life of sex trafficking. And so as a minor, as 13 years old, my frontal lobe was not fully developed to really process and understand, why is this 19-year-old wanting to hang out with me? All I knew was the emotional impact. And the way I speak is from the heart, because I really want people to get this and to understand how pervasive it is. As you said, there's not enough being done about it. There's not enough awareness, and taught parents to actually talking to their kids about it so that they can be safe and protected from sex trafficking. Because once you get involved in the life, it is a lifelong journey of healing, overcoming post-traumatic stress disorder, other mental health issues like anxiety or even digestive problems. There's so many things that survivors can struggle with for their lifetime. And it's just better, isn't it, to not engage in that at all and not fall into that.
Absolutely. And
So
what I appreciate about what you shared is, like you said, definitely not, we're trying to provide like a platform or recipe for like how these things happen and those things like that, or like any promotion in that way. But like, I really do appreciate what you mentioned is that, but it is a common face and it wasn't a common place. I mean, we're not going to say what like that you shouldn't have
yeah.
been, because I know we also love to do victim blaming in our society where it's like,
Mhm.
you probably shouldn't have been at that pool. Really? It's a pool. You know what I mean? Like, why should you not have been there? Like, of course, this is a place you frequented. I mean, it was, it's during that time, like you should have all the rights in the world to be able to be there. But the other thing is that I think that was, I'm glad you brought awareness to, is that Mary, came to you. That wasn't necessarily the trafficker themselves. It was also somebody else that was there, but it was a familiar face. It was somebody that came across, presented themselves as a friend, as you mentioned, like preyed upon those different, characteristics that you had, and not only just your insecurities, but you wanting a friend. And so they saw
Yeah.
that. Exactly. So it's like, and so again, these are human qualities that we all have. Like a lot of us always crave companionship. A lot of us want to have friends, and people that we can trust. But also, if you add on the fact that we have had some kind of abuse or had some kind of like void there,
Mhm.
we're absolutely going to want to fill that in some way. And so for someone to then take advantage of that, and present this opportunity instead of actually genuinely wanting to get to know you is just incredible. But that's where a lot of it starts. And I just think like that's also that unfortunate commonality that exists with a lot of these interpersonal violence situations, not just, and you yourself are also an expert on, domestic violence as well, and provide a lot of guidance in that area. But that's another one where it's a lot of like, we prey on those insecurities. The abuser tends to inflict that and know that those insecurities are there, and then tends to take advantage of that opportunity that they see. So it's just, fascinating to me. And I appreciate that you shared that that's how it started with you. So like what, in that case, was there anything you could have done to prevent it? You know what I mean? Like it's nothing like that. That's why I love that we're having these conversations, because, a lot of times we think like, oh, well, I need to, and we should definitely protect our children more and do all those things. But it's also, like we said, the awareness is just knowing that it's not always things that we're, preventing or what it is. It's just knowing that individuals are out there with different opportunities. And it's not that we're doing anything to put ourselves in those situations. They're seeing us as
Right.
targets. Exactly. So like, just
Absolutely. Yes, that was very well put, Melissa. And I would say that traffickers are opportunists. So they're constantly looking for opportunities to exploit the vulnerable and the innocent in our society. So be that Medicare fraud, or be that, of the elderly, or be that children, for commercial sexual exploitation. They are always out there looking for it. And most of the time, these type of criminal activities, especially in sex trafficking, are run by organized crime. It's sort of like a pyramid scheme, So I would soon find out that Mary, who probably was a victim at some time, now became a recruiter, and she worked for a pimp who told me I could call him daddy. And so, being a young girl coming from an abusive background where my father verbally, physically, and sexually assaulted me, I didn't know the difference between safe and unsafe male love. And I crave that. I crave that so much. I tell men all the time when I do my talks, I just came from a law enforcement training with 200 people, co-ed. I said, thank you for being here. Thank you for, sticking it out, a difficult subject, but also remember the value you bring to your home and to your children, because a man brings that special value of protection that only a father figure, I believe, can give. And of course, there are awesome mothers who are doing both. But if at all possible, I think that if we can get fathers to stay in the home and to participate and to be a protector like they're made to be, then there will be less opportunity for traffickers to exploit their children. My father, now, he was a working businessman and had no time for supervising his children. He just wanted to make money. And that was his thing. He was a Jewish businessman. He was all about money. And because of that, he was absent for a lot of our lives, and the trauma, the different difficult things that went on. My poor mom, she took 2 buses to go to work for him because, like most domestic violence survivors, like you talked about, they do go back to their abuser. She had left him and divorced him, but she relied on him financially. And so there we were at the pool. It was a summertime. Back then, you didn't worry about the stranger danger like you must worry about it today. And so Mary approached me at the pool and introduced me to her pimp, who I really thought was a safe person because he had 2 and 3-year-old little kids at the pool with him that he was throwing up in the air. I would never have thought that that was a dangerous man because I was a child. I thought fathers are safe, mine is not, but other people, everyone else's is. You just automatically assume that your family is the exception, not the rule, that you don't realize how many kids out there are actually being abused. You think you're the only one. And so here comes Mary. Then along came Mary, and she became my best friend. She echoed everything I said. Her father was abusive. My father was abusive. Okay, so we had commonalities, and that's what traffickers look for. And this man, he handed me $1 so that I could go buy some chips. And all I knew him as was daddy. And I took the $1, but he held on to it. And you know what he said, Melissa? He said, one day you're going to owe me. And you'll know when that day comes and you have to pay it back. And I looked at Mary and I said, what is he talking about? I remember I'm very innocent. I didn't have sex education. This was going from 6th grade to 7th grade. And back then, middle school started at 7. So there was no sex ed. And I was just dumbfounded because something about this just didn't seem right. I just was hungry and wanted chips, but my mom didn't have extra money for that kind of thing. So being a single parent and living in a hotel, it wasn't easy for her. But I was grateful for whatever she did give me because she sacrificed a lot. And so I took the $1 and I was like, I'm hungry. And Mary said, don't worry about him. He's just playing around. When she said that, I agreed to take it. And I thought, I just brushed it off. Like it was, what could it be? At 13 years old, what possibly could that mean? Like he wants me to carry something for him? This is what you're thinking as a 13-year-old. Like, I mean, I had only been exposed to, very limited things in my life. So this didn't add up. The money in exchange for commercial sex, no way. And if somebody would have told me that prostitution was going on, I would have said that, well, that doesn't happen to kids. I did know what prostitution was, and my mom always told me it was wrong, but I didn't sign up for it. And so soon enough, Mary took me around to meet different men that she had gone on dates with. That's what she called it, dates. And she didn't say you're going to be tricking, you're going to be a prostitute, none of those things, because I guarantee you I would have run away as fast as she said it. But see, those are words that they sugarcoat into dating meeting different people, exciting life, adventure. They make it appealing so that you're blind to the reality. And so then when she would bring me home after this month-long grooming every day, she brought me home exactly on time. When my mom said 8 o'clock, that's what time I had to be home, she had me there. She was so respectful. I always say parents are being recruited and groomed just as much as children, not because the parents are going to do any commercial sexual activity, hopefully not. No, but the parents are becoming blind and normalized to the interaction that this child has with an inappropriate male or a female. I mean, Mary was 19. She had no business hanging out with a 13-year-old. That should have been the first red flag. That's just weird. If you're not family, why are you honestly hanging out with a 13-year-old? And not to mention a bunch of kids at the pool area, and their group had, 19-year-old guys, and it was like just odd that they would want to talk to us. But of course, I felt honored because I'm like, I'm chosen to be Mary's friend, and she really invested in me. But Melissa, what they're really doing is they are doing business. This is their investment into their future, where they're going to capitalize off of all that time that they spent with you. And that day would come when she took me to a hotel room where there was an older man, and he was 65 years old. And she said, there's a man who wants to be a dad just to you. And I had had one other interaction with another boy, that she set up a date with, but I started to cry when he tried to touch me. And so he told her I was a virgin. And so that's how I began to be more of a premium for them, because virgins brought a higher price. So when I went to meet Mary the next day after that incident, she said, put on a white dress, you're going to be a bride, and I'm going to introduce you to a man who wants to be a father just to you. And remember, I didn't know the difference because my father only called me 4-letter words. He hit me. I didn't understand what a safe father was, but I wanted to go to the mall. I wanted to go shopping. I wanted to go to dinner. I wanted to be treated like a princess, like every little girl, but that's not what happened. When she opened the door to this man's hotel room, it wasn't a fairy tale. And this certainly was no castle. This man was half dressed with his beer belly hanging out. A sex tourist came to Miami Beach looking for sex with a 13-year-old minor, virgin girl, and he was willing to pay good money for it. And so that's how it started for me.
Oh man. And not only do I appreciate you sharing, but it's just that the incredible steps, like you said, that like it went. And so like, and the progression and just how it began with this, but like, and then you're not questioning it because in the process, it seems like this is somebody that you can confide in. And like you said, you have pride in it. Like, it's just, there's so much wrapped in that. And I agree. I mean, I think like, it's kind of like being chosen for a team. Like, you know what I mean? It was kind of nice to be picked. It was kind of nice to be seen and just exactly like to kind of have that, and from the older crowd. And so understandably, I even have a daughter now who does that. Like, we'll go sometimes when we go to the trampoline park, we'll like be so upset when the teenagers don't want to play with her. And I'm like, well, you're not in the same age group, so they actually don't want to. So it was opposite for her. She was upset that they did not. But I think so similarly, had they shown attention to her, it would have been flattering. Like, that's flattering that like older kid is seeing something in me, like who's younger than them. So again, that's why like I just think it's just incredible then the whole that they're then able to have because of that, because you're operating out of this flattery and out of this validation that you were not getting elsewhere. And your mother, not only being a single parent, not only couldn't afford certain things, but your mother was pretty busy probably. I'm sure she was also like working and, having to provide for you. Like, that's not an easy task. So it was just such a perfect opportunity to take advantage of like, what she wasn't necessarily noticing and didn't necessarily make the connection on. And she might not necessarily have been recruited into a life to know to look out for those warning signs and to know what it looks like. Exactly. Like, so there's not this manual on it. So That is incredible, but I also feel like it's just such an unfortunate truth, though, that like because you had never, been in that situation, that yeah, human trafficking is a very profitable business. I do agree,
Mhm.
and it's incredibly profitable. No, of course, not for you though, not for the people that are recruited. It is absolutely profitable for the pimps. It is profitable for those for the essential clients that they have, if we can even call them that. But it's just a ridiculous like amount, like, and where the money is being drawn from, it's from people's bodies. Like that's the incredible part to me. Like
Right.
really being sold, right? And I'm just like, it's I'm glad we're having the conversation, but it's also sometimes you kind of like take a step back and you're like, wow, we really live in a world where people are sold. Essentially, people are sold. And in your case, there was a higher price tag on you and our bounty essentially because you had never been touched before, which you shouldn't have been. I mean, you didn't necessarily like you should not have been in that situation to begin with. And so for that to be the experience is just, yeah, beyond. It's definitely beyond words. But with that, I know the good thing is, so I was so entrenched in your story, you almost kind of like forget. The good thing is you're not there anymore. You are
Right.
a doctor, you're a pronounced person, but like, wow, you almost get like so engrossed that you're like, wow, what happened to that little girl? But we know that you eventually grew up and all of that. So I am curious, like, how exactly, and now offer of an incredible story. And so with that, because we're definitely going to shed more light on that. Before you even got into that, like, how was it that you were able to escape? Because I'm sure it wasn't like probably an easy thing to do, but how were you able to leave that life behind?
So I went through that experience. And again, for the entire story, because my story is so long, I think it's better for people to read the book. The book is very engrossing too. And I've been asked this before, it's safe to give to your 13-year-old. It's written at an 8th grade level because I wanted to protect the kids that are most vulnerable, the 12, 13, 14-year-olds. And unfortunately, even younger are being recruited. So I think every child should be educated at different levels, absolutely, to protect them. And regardless of what people think of algebra, I needed this education much more. I do not remember using algebra ever, but I remember that I was recruited the next time in my middle school. Actually, right there in my middle school, my friend's dad, which she wasn't really a friend, she was a recruiter. Her dad was a trafficker. And so the first one ended with attempted murder. The second one ended being kidnapped and sent to a brothel. The third one, excuse me, ended with them trying to sell me to a man with AIDS. I didn't get it. Thankfully, it's not like today that there's drugs and you can live a fruitful life. Back then, it was very scary to hear that that man who raped me had this, but I was spared. And so the last traffic, and those were drug traffickers who were also part of the Colombian trafficking with the um, cocaine cowboys here in Miami, back in the 80s. So I got away from them. My mom got them kicked out of the building, but they would still come and find me on the street. And then eventually I started dating a young man whose father worked for Escobar in the cartel, because I felt like he just came into my life and I thought, well, he might be safer than these traffickers. I didn't know they were called traffickers, but these guys were constantly threatening me, stopping me on the street, sending girls to get me after they had been kicked out of the building. Um, I thought I would be safer with my boyfriend, whose father had some kind of pull in the drug industry. So I escaped, drug addiction. I finally made a deal with God that if he would set me free from that, I would no longer do cocaine. I had become addicted in my middle school, and I was very fortunate to get away from that. But you see, it was more than one escape. It was a constant running, a constant escaping. But sometimes you get out of the fire only to jump into the frying pan. So marrying this man, dangerous, very dangerous man, for 20 years has been the bane of my existence. To this day, he will attempt to destroy my life in any way that he can. So he wound up getting his legal citizenship through marrying me once his father got arrested by the DEA for working for Escobar and the Medellin cartel. And as a result, all of his family became legal citizens when they did not deserve it. And none of them should have been, because they were all part of this terrible, terrible group of people. And they continue to bully me every single chance they get up until now. But because I have chosen to fight for justice and fight against crime, that's why I receive such resistance from them. But I will not stop fighting, because I've escaped death more times than I can tell you. And it's only by the power of God that I have been able to. Truly, I cannot take credit for it, because miraculously, I don't know how these things happen. I just know, when my boyfriend was at one point in a gang shootout, God told me go across the street, and he got shot, but I didn't get shot. So I'm telling you, I'm grateful to be alive. And now I just recently overcame open heart surgery for an aneurysm. Last year, I got diagnosed because of all the stress from the family members. I had developed so much stress, and the loss of my mom, who was my hero, created this heart aneurysm. I fell and hit my head, and they found it. And 5 months later, I wound up having open heart surgery, and I had to get a second opinion and make sure that I got the medical care that I needed. And so I always tell people, you just keep fighting, fighting for your life, fighting for what's right, fighting for justice, and fighting for yourself, whether that's in a medical setting, in a relational setting, or just anywhere in the world, because we still need good people to be an example for others. Just like Eileen is and what has been a blessing to me, I also strive to do the same thing to others and pay it forward and bless others. And I've helped so many come out of trafficking who are now living fruitful lives a decade later with children. And that is what I want to be remembered for. That's what's important, not the negative, but the positive.
Amen. And I just feel like too, not should only should we continue to keep fighting, because we're also worth fighting for. I mean, you're definitely someone worth fighting for, but also there's just so many other survivors that I feel like,
Yeah.
have been told the opposite, that, you were worthless, that you weren't worth the struggle, you weren't worth anything. And it's what's allowed a lot of the abuse to continue. But now that a lot of us have been able to, break, free from that, I think part of that is also those freeing messages and just being able to counteract those negative messages that you received, and know that no, you do have a lot of great worth, and that you are worth that fight, and that you should keep on. And I think with that, that makes so much sense too, that your organization is known as, there is hope, and you being able to do that, because I definitely feel like it's super clear that more better than anyone, what it's like to have, endured that, and now, and all that. So yes, I wanted to give you the floor for
Yes.
that.
Yes, and a lot of this in the book, Stolen, the true story of a sex trafficking survivor, I talk about the work that I have done with survivors. So if anyone is interested in starting a ministry at church, or doing work or a nonprofit, some of the tips are in here. I've done strip club outreach, I've done jail outreach, public schools, which, by the way, 1 in 3 middle schoolers are at risk, and 1 in 9 high schoolers, for recruitment into sex trafficking, which means 5 to 6 million annually are at risk, and 1 million are being trafficked every year. That's out of the small sampling of 300 kids that I worked with in the school system here, and 19 of those came forward with cases of trafficking. So I just feel like it's important to throw those firsthand statistics out, and again, a lot of insight and information here, but don't just read it and, absorb it. Read it and pass it on. Pass it on to somebody, a middle school or high school student that that needs it, or that you're suspecting something. And so if you see something, say something. You know, you can always report anonymously to the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-3737, 888. And it's better to report and be wrong than not report it and be sorry. I'm just grateful I got out of it. And my mom helped rescue me the first time when they left me for dead. The other times, you know, I was very fortunate to get away without losing my life and my health, but it doesn't mean that it was over for me, the battle. And life is a battle. Everyone is fighting some sort of battle. But I hope this testimony has brought you encouragement to know that if there was hope for me, there is hope for you, and there's hope for anybody. So
Amen.
thank you, Melissa.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, I bet. And I didn't want to wrap it up just yet. I definitely wanted to be able to ask you because also, well, but speaking of that, the only other thing I hadn't touched on before, but just, wanted to also give you an opportunity to share. And of course, as you heard, there is tremendous value in the book. Definitely like, using it, spreading it, making sure others.
Yeah.
But I think that was another fascinating thing that we had shared, like in your bio, especially too, was that leaving was even harder than having been in the
Yeah.
situation. And so, all that. And so with that too, I was just wondering if you had any like, tips around that. What did that look like for you, and or what you even meant by like, just saying that alone?
Well, I think many domestic violence survivors understand that it takes approximately 7 times to leave your abuser before you finally leave for good. When my son was 2 years old, I left for the very first time, and I went back to my mom's house, and I should have stayed. But there was a purpose, and that was my daughter. And so she was going to come 4 years later. But the abuse continued to get worse as I became educated. I would say, number one, get educated yourself. I went to Bible studies at church where I learned what the abuse was. I wasn't expecting it, but it was like God had that message for me to hear. And so I had to deal with the deep disappointment. And then I went to counseling. So if you can go to counseling, get counseling. My ex-husband stopped me from going to counseling, but then I became a realtor, sold a house, and I paid for my counseling in full by myself. He stopped all of the resources and wouldn't allow me to pay for any counseling, but I was able to get the boundaries lesson that I needed. So when I set boundaries on him, then he pushed my daughter and caused a welt in her arm. That's when I knew I had to leave. I had to make plans to leave, but it would take me a good 4 or 5 years to put those plans in place because I did not want my daughter to grow up thinking that this was normal and marrying someone just like her dad. Unfortunately, though, that was not the case. And my daughter has her own testimony. But I will say I tried my very best to leave that situation as soon as I saw how it was affecting her, being afraid all the time, and tried to rebuild a life. But it was harder leaving because every opportunity that my ex-husband got, he would um, do things to undermine me. And so I will tell you, um, I wasn't planning to share this, but maybe I have another book in me and it's time to share it. 2.5 years ago, he came to California. And when he saw, I had moved to California to go to law school because I had always wanted to go to law school and be a lawyer and a better advocate for others. And so I enjoyed law school. My daughter moved with me, but my ex-husband cut my daughter off because she was supporting me and there with me. And at a certain point, he came to our home in Huntington Beach and he saw the beautiful apartment and the life that I had given my daughter. And I knew at that moment he was going to take it all away. I could feel it. I could see it in his eyes. Knowing this man for 20 years, being married to him, I knew what was coming. The other shoe was about to drop. And that's when my ex-husband became very good friends with my daughter's boyfriend then. she wound up getting engaged to this man who I felt there were red flags of abuse, because he was very controlling, but he was just like her dad. You know, he needed his papers, he needed an American wife, and he started discarding everything in her life. He didn't want her emotional security pet, you know, for emotional support pet who she loved. She had to get rid of her dog. She had to get rid of her cats. She had to get rid of her bed that I just bought her. She had to get rid of her mom. And so even though I went with them to pick out the venue, I bought her wedding dress in Newport, California. I took her to Europe for graduation present, and I was studying law at that time there. But when we came back, I had bought gifts for all her bridesmaids. When we came back, she was instructed to call me and tell me that I was uninvited to the wedding. And as a result, she would no longer be able to fight human trafficking with me and have nothing to do with the nonprofit. She could have nothing to do with me, and I would never see my grandkids. So you can imagine how devastating that was. But I knew the source, because my ex-husband had done things like that before, but not to that level. Now I was surrounded by people who loved me in California and felt very, very blessed and protected. But all of a sudden, he wanted to take that away because, like in any domestic violence situation, they have to destroy you. I don't know why. I don't know why they feel the need to do that, but it made him feel insecure that I was successful. And I had to see her anyway on her wedding day. So I snuck into the wedding and I parked my car in the tunnel that I saw the day before because I went to bring her artwork. I knew she wanted to show her artwork. She was an artist to her new in-laws. So I had seen this tunnel, and I'm sorry, this is the way my life goes. For whatever reason, it happens like this. So I saw the tunnel and I went through the resident entrance of this country club and I parked my car in the tunnel. I prayed with my friend. Her daughter was a bridesmaid. So I knew exactly where the girls were and I made a beeline for the bridal suite. And my daughter looked completely different. She looked like a Colombian Barbie doll. And when I saw her there, she was so sad. But then I knelt down and she was so happy to see me. Somebody was doing her hair. And I said, Diana, is this what you want? Do you want me here? And she said, Mom, I don't know what I want. I don't know anything anymore. And that's when I knew that she was being abused. And I said, well, I'm here for you. You know, I just wanted to take her out of this place. And I could see by the fear in the eye, all these girls were like my daughters. They just were silent. They didn't know what to say. And I would find out later, one of her bridesmaids was stuck in LA because there was a hurricane in Florida. She called me because she knew I would pick her up. She was stuck at LAX. So I brought her home with me and she wrote a 4-page letter to my daughter. And she told me that she saw all these terrible things happen while the fiance was there. But she remembered one specific thing, that Diana's father kept asking her, did you sign the contract? Her fiance kept asking her, did you sign the contract? I wound up being chased out of the wedding by 10 men, and even men, people with weapons, sticks, chasing me around the venue. I couldn't see my daughter get married. And I called the police, and the police eventually went to the venue after the wedding had taken place. And they saw, this police officer was so kind, in Corona, California. He saw the contract and he said, your ex-husband made both your son and daughter sign this contract that you are not allowed to be at the wedding, otherwise he won't pay for it. And I just thought, there's the other shoe. He just couldn't wait. I had paid for the cake, the decorations, her dress. I wanted to contribute to my daughter's wedding, but I wasn't allowed to be there. And so the killer, though, was telling my daughter, instructing her to call me and say, you'll never be able to see your grandkids. My mom, who was at the wedding, was so upset that she couldn't see me because she said, "You're my daughter." And she had to be wheeled onto the plane the next day, but they wouldn't let my mom see me. They kept her locked in a house for 3 days. She was miserable and up until the wedding, and her feet were swollen, and that began her problem walking, to the point that when I came to visit her for the holidays in 2019, she was so sick that I decided to forego law school and be her caretaker. And COVID hit, but I was the only one who was willing to take care of her. Everybody else seemed too busy or unavailable, but I was honored to be my mom's caretaker. And unfortunately, the way things would happen, my mom died because she had a heart condition. She died on my daughter's wedding anniversary to the hour. Yeah, none of us knew she was going. And so, it was 5 o'clock in California, it was 8 o'clock here. That's when she passed. And she just slipped away. She had asked me to sit with her and, pray with her and just love on her. And I was so, so honored. I truly was so happy to be here with her because she was such an amazing, godly woman. But unfortunately, the response from the family, which I invited them to show peace, to come to the funeral, because that's how my mom was. They came to the funeral, but my daughter was not allowed to hug me. And she left me roses in the pew. She left my mom roses in the coffin. But one of the survivors we had both rescued, she came and she was so excited to see my daughter, because my daughter used to work in anti-trafficking with me. And she was there with her mom, and she was just sort of like a little bridge that brought this amazing opportunity to love on one another. And I saw the love my daughter had for me still was there, but all of this was against her will. So I say all that to say leaving has been harder, because they really have made such a point to destroy or try to destroy whatever good thing I have done. But you can't destroy God's work in the end, because it's not even my testimony. And the fruit of that is that little girl that came and the other little girls that have come after. And I know my own little girl, she will come back to me. I just pray that she will remember who she is and how strong she is. So sorry if that's not what you bargained for, but
Oh no, it was, how about it was more in such in the best way, but like, wow. And like you said, because I do think that, and yeah, I mean, I think the best things are those things that are not prepared for. And so like that we don't even, know. But I think, I mean, I was already very moved by the fact that I do think you've definitely been divinely protected. Oh, for sure. Like I definitely
yeah,
think God has special angels for you, because like you said, I mean, there were certain situations where you're like, I don't even know. I mean, I probably shouldn't have survived this. To be honest,
yeah,
anybody else wouldn't have. Yet I'm
yeah,
still here. And I feel like it's obviously also for the divine work you're also doing. I think you're not
mhm,
only divinely protected, but you're doing incredible work for others. And it is not only is it beyond necessary, you know what I mean, for so many, but it's like, if they're going to have anybody that can help them, it definitely is, incredible when it's somebody that can relate in such a,
yeah,
incredible way, you know what I mean? And that can do that. But you've shown that in so many facets. I mean, it was already a lot knowing that you had that upbringing with the human trafficking and then with the domestic violence and
mhm,
all of that. But to also be able to shed light on that, I do agree. If there is another book you're feeling, then maybe this will, I mean, I could see the value in it, because that's what I think sometimes also gets missed, is that you live that life of abuse, and it is great. It's great when you're able to escape it and all of that, but sometimes it can also still persist. And there are other
yes,
ways where it can also come back. And
yes.
and like you said, it's once again nothing you've asked for. None of this was anything you asked for.
Oh,
None of it was
girl.
anything you prepared for. None of it. And then for your children to be a pawns in someone else's game. I mean, it's just, it's beyond. And so it's just, Yes, I agree. I'm glad to see that your daughter, like when you saw her, that there was still that. And of course, because I definitely, didn't think for a second that she didn't love her mom. And just like your mom was a hero for you, that you're still a hero for her. It's just that unfortunately you have
Mm,
these forces, working against. And I
thank
just
you.
think like, and they see that. I think the other incredible thing here, though, is that you obviously have such incredible value because your attacker is clearly still trying to diminish that value. It's clearly that great that they're like, you know what, I'm gonna have to do everything I can. I'm gonna have to work a little harder on this one because I need to cut off that connection because it's too positive. It is too positive of a connection. So I have to get in the way. I'm gonna have to go ahead and stop it. Like, wow. So the only thing, beyond that is that, yeah, it's incredibly unfortunate and ridiculously uncalled for, but it just also goes to show that your abuser definitely sees you as that much of a threat. And you're a force to be reckoned with. You do love your children, like that's evident. And I just think that they just can't stand to see that, though. Cannot stand to see that, and will do anything in their power to stop that and to, like, make sure that that connection does not happen, because it's going to definitely, it's that strong, and it can outweigh, unfortunately, that abuse that is there. And I feel like the good thing is you're still loving them from afar, and being able
Oh
to,
yeah,
right. And so that, like you said, there's just so many things that even though abusers try to take away, that they can't, you know what I mean? And even though they may have hurt
right.
you, break you is not the story here. You're definitely not a broken person whatsoever. You're definitely a
No,
person that has lived through a lot, has seen a lot, but has also done so much for so many. And you continue to do it, and I think
yeah,
it's just wonderful to hear that, and you're doing it in so many different ways. So I think nonprofit is amazing, and it's wonderful that even if it was for a certain period of time, that your daughter was still there to share with you at any point in time,
yeah,
at any point, exactly.
yeah.
That you will always have that to share, but then that you also do it with your trainings, you also do it with your speaking engagements. You're doing it today, but also as the author, and so that book that you've already made, and like you said, if you're going to make more in the future, I can't wait to hear about it. But even with the book you've already made, it's something that it's part of your legacy. It's an incredible
Mhm.
message that you shared, and so that's why I want to echo once again, as you shared earlier, that if anybody, if any of this has resonated with anyone, this is exactly why you should connect. Use this as a resource, but also reach out to Dr. Cat. You know what I mean? I mean, if it felt like there's something there and you want to be able to learn more, yes, this is exactly why people like this exists, and so like why you are such a tremendous advocate, and why you're able, the perfect person poised to be able to help other people. And so I'm just,
Thank you.
absolutely, absolutely. So that's why I'm like,
And I
that's how
do
moved I
talk
was by
about,
what you said.
oh, God bless you. And I appreciate every word of encouragement because as you can tell, I don't get as much of that as, I get a lot of the negative from the other side, so when I get positive, people don't realize in order to have a testimony, like the test can be fierce,
Yep.
it can be overwhelming. And actually I do a lot of work with the FBI, and one of the a cardiologist who's a friend of mine through them, through the Citizens Academy, he looked at my records, my medical records, and my mom's just a few months ago, like 3 months ago, and he said, Kat, this heart aneurysm did not come from genetics. It came from stress. And after I told him the story I just told you, he said that was enough to kill anybody. So you see, there is also like another escaping death because heart aneurysms are very difficult to detect unless you're specifically looking for something in the heart. And girl, I never had a heart condition in my life. I worked out vigorously. I took care of myself. Now I'm slowly getting back into it, but I'm only 6 months post-op from an 8-hour open heart surgery. So I am just grateful to be alive. I truly am, and to fulfill the purpose and promise of God that He has on my life for however long He chooses for me to be on this earth. I am grateful to be on this earth because we don't know the day or the hour, none of us. I never would have imagined that I had a heart aneurysm, for goodness sakes,
Right.
brewing because of all of this pain, but it was just too much. And I would just also caution people that stress does kill. So please take care of yourself. Have self-care. Have moments where you can set boundaries and love yourself because all of these accolades and wonderful experiences, They're important and they're great, but nothing is as important as you, because you can never be replaced. And so that's something that I have had to learn through this. And of course, to love as many people, to share the love of God with as many people as possible so that they can know there is hope for them too. But you don't have to go through tragedy to have value. You are valuable just by yourself, just by being you. And it has truly been an honor to be on a show with someone like you who's actually in depth and insightful and ask those questions to draw it out. So you're the one who brought it out of me. So kudos to you, because it was more than I planned to share. But you know what? It's healing to share. And I always encourage survivors, if they want to speak, speak, because your testimony will help somebody, but it will also help you.
Ooh, amen. See, I couldn't even say that any better myself. And it was literally the, perfect but also like as you were saying how grateful you are, that's what I was thinking is well, we're grateful for you. And so, and your
Aw,
purpose is definitely not over. It clearly needs to still be served. And so like I'm just so glad that, yeah, definitely that we did have this moment. And I agree, I've gained a lot. So viewers, I don't know about y'all, but I did. I definitely gained a lot from this.
thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And so with that, the only last thing I have is just if viewers want to connect with you, if they want to get the book, could you please let us know how they can do that?
Sure. Yeah. So stolen, I talk about the different trafficking experiences, but one of them that I didn't mention enough is the false modeling scam. That was the last one. So I always want to protect vulnerable and innocent and young people from being trafficked. I want to bring prevention. So on social media, if you get approached for a modeling gig, just know it's most likely not legitimate. Okay, those are traffickers that are using uh, false modeling scams to recruit you. So be wise. And the friends that you accept, be careful that you know who is watching you, and be careful what you post. So I want to give those warnings, not to put scantily clad pictures of yourself. Leave those for your private albums with you and your loved ones, not for the world to see, because there are bad people out there, and they again will not come across as someone you would suspect. They don't come with a pitchfork or with gold teeth and a furry hat. Mary came with a red bikini. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that, except not everyone is who you think they are. They could even be clergy, law enforcement, foster parents, foster care. All of those have been arrested for trafficking of minors, including parents. But I will say this: if you have good parents, value their judgment. If you have good parents, it's sad to have to say that, because everyone's parent should be good, but you can make your own family right where you are. And so we've started support groups. We are starting an online program, online support program also, for those who have been affected by human trafficking. And so our nonprofit is called thereishopeforme.org. And all of the classes will be taught by survivors to survivors, Survival Skills 101. I'm really excited about that. You can get the book on our website. You can get Trafficking in America on our website. And of course, you can pray for survivors. You can donate, you can give, but you can pray, most importantly. And always, always, always trust your instincts. Keep your own kids safe first, and be that model, that example in your own life and in your own family before going out into the world. Always be that example as much as you can. Nobody's expecting perfection, but everyone needs love and they need a sense of belonging. So we hope to bring that for those who don't have other ways to receive it, but it is out there and it's available to you. So if you are a victim of human trafficking, or you are a survivor, you've already overcome it, just know there is a place for you. And we're here for you, and there's hope for you.
Ooh, yes. And you heard it here. So I don't have, and when there's something that wonderful that has been said, you don't want to ruin it by adding anything else. So I just agree, affirm, and just hope that, that you please take advantage of this great support, these great resources, and this great, wonderful, knowledge that has been shared. And so with that, Dr. Cat, has been nothing short of a pleasure and honor to have you. And so thank you so very
Same
much.
here.
And thank you everyone that tuned in today. So thank you.
Bless you. Bless you, my
Absolutely.
friend. Take care, everyone. Thank you.